Just happened to be that was the assignment I got. I got all the good ones.
We did it. We did it, Joe.
Oh, son of a.
You know, we love America a lot, but it really does feel as though there is a dark spell over this country right now. A very small group of leaders who are deeply and abidingly corrupted, who openly talk about mysterious terrorist plots that should not be happening. I mean, like a moral country should not be doing these kind of things. But if you look back at the people's history of America and you look back at some of the things that the deep state is capable of, then you really begins to broaden your mind as to what they would do to retain power. One of the more malevolent actors and characters in this play is somebody named Victoria Nuland. Victoria Nuland has been the architect of some of the dumbest foreign policy decisions, some of the worst boondoggles, and has gotten tens of thousands of Americans killed in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. She is a wicked witch. She was promising on camera about a year ago that the Nordstream 2 pipeline, that's the pipeline that connects Russia with Germany. It has nothing to do with America, except for it would destabilize American natural gas, our ability to sell natural gas, and it would take off our ability to pressure Russia because Germany is not going to abide by any type of economic sanctions on their number one supplier of energy. It would really essentially remove America from the table as it pertains to influence in Europe. Nord Stream 2 pipeline was something that America's been against for those geopolitical reasons, but this Victoria Nuland character was out straight up saying that America would bring an end to the pipeline one way or another. That's pretty declarative. Watch.
With regard to Nord Stream 2, we continue to have very strong and clear conversations with our German allies, and I want to be clear with you today. If Russia invades Ukraine, one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward.
Now, Victoria Nuland was echoed by Joe Biden very shortly after. Joe Biden, of course, not a good person to play poker with, was smirking and grinning, knowing damn well what they were about to do, saying that, yeah, one way or another, we're going to stop Nord Stream 2. That's a pretty dark thing to say. One way or another. Is that normal diplomatic terminology? Is that the kind of terminology that de-escalates a situation? Joe Biden, one way or another, we're going to stop Nord Stream 2. Go.
Let me answer the first question first. If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly? Since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control.
We will. I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
So, I promise you we'll be able to do it. We'll bring an end to it one way or another. Well, them's fighting's words. And then they were also prophetic words, because it turns out that Nord Stream 2 was blown up. And nobody knows what happened to it. Victoria Nuland, however, pranced around victoriously, saying that it's a hunk of metal at the bottom of the ocean. Yay! Antony Blinken said this is a strategic advantage for America. So nobody shed any tears over Nord Stream 2 being blown up. So what the hell's happening? And ladies and gentlemen, we need to begin, straight up by saying our faith in the American government and the morality of our government is at rock bottom, absolute zero. And the fact that we can't immediately dismiss this is brought to us by multiple members of the Senate that we have been talking to, multiple members of the House, people who have every right to know about a military operation like this, were not informed. And so what's happening here is, quite frankly, on its face, deeply and deeply disturbing. And if found out to be true, possibly one of the largest terrorist acts ever committed by your government. And we'll get you to the White House and the DOD's response to this in just one moment. So let's begin, ladies and gentlemen. Why do we believe that the U.S. and Joe Biden gave the order, according to this Daily Mail article, to destroy the Nord Stream pipeline? Well, it would be a strategic advantage, obviously, to America. America would retain natural gas and energy control over Europe and would cut off Russia's ability to have a large economic impact on Europe and really like control Europe's energy. Okay? Europe not an energy-rich area. That's why all of the wars in Europe have more or less been fought over energy, coal, natural gas, and so on. All the great wars fought in Europe over energy because Europe itself is not a energy-rich continent. And as civilization advances, you need oil, you need coal, you need natural resources. And so people fight wars over those things. America doesn't want Russia, who has massive energy resources, to have undue control over its allies in NATO in Europe. America wants to stop the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. So how did they do it? Well, ladies and gentlemen, according to a whistleblower and according to a former New York Times investigative reporter who has 50 years of experience, a bomb was planted by the U.S. Navy in a secret mission overseen directly by Joe Biden. Divers planted C4 explosives on 3 Nord Stream pipelines in June of 2022, which were detonated 3 months later using sonar buoy that broadcast a signal that triggered the bombs, according to the report. This report is extremely sophisticated, extremely detailed. You can see here on the screen the alleged bombing plot and how it was carried out. There was a naval action that was well publicized in the Baltic Sea, and they used that as a cover to send Navy divers down. According to the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Seymour Hersh, and then those bombs were remotely detonated by a Norwegian spy plane. This man has, we looked through his report. This man has the dates, the times, the codes, the military call signs. Somebody on the inside leaked all of this information. We can scroll down. You can see where the pipeline is. You can see how the pipeline operates. This pipeline goes from those bays inside of Russia to Germany, which is the largest economy in Europe by a large margin, and would have been, of course, the number one gas provider and energy provider to Europe. Would have given Russia quite a bit of leverage, actually, quite frankly, over Europe. Did America bomb this pipeline? Well, we have now this breaking report, which is sophisticated and detailed and brought to you by somebody with extreme credentials. Tucker Carlson, who has been on this story for a very, very long time, seized on this last night and said, you really don't live in the country that you think you live in. It's pretty dark stuff. But the longer you spend looking at what your government is capable of, whether it's Watergate or whether it's the Kennedy assassination or whether it's the suicide letters that they sent to MLK, the longer you will come to the realization that Ike Eisenhower did, which is there's something really, really dark going on inside of the black box of our permanent superstate government, a government over our government. Tucker Carlson, obviously very awake on this issue. Go.
So then the pipelines actually blew up. These are the pipelines that bring natural gas from Eastern Europe to Western Europe to keep the European economy going. And they exploded, causing the single largest human-caused environmental disaster in all of history. And again, setting Europe on the road to actual poverty. So it was an unpopular event, and Joe Biden denied any responsibility. In fact, he blamed Russia. Joe Biden and his whole administration told us that somehow Russia, for reasons they never made clear, just because they're evil, had sabotaged their own energy pipeline. Watch this.
It was a deliberate act of sabotage, and now the Russians are pumping out disinformation and lies.
So that was in September, and it was obvious from the very first day, well, that's not true. It's not that Vladimir Putin is too good a person to blow up Nord Stream, but like, why would he? It only hurts him. And by the way, it really hurts Western Europe.
So you have to sit and ask, in any crime, cui bono, who benefits? You have to use Occam's razor. You have to assume that the least amount of conclusions that you need to jump to is going to really lead you probably to the correct decision. So who benefits? Who benefits if this pipeline blows up? Well, this pipeline is the lifeline that essentially keeps Putin and Russia alive. They need people to use this energy. They need these large economies to use this energy. America ain't going to buy it. They can't get a pipeline to India. They're right next door to Europe. This is Vladimir Putin's prize possession. We're not simping for Putin. We're just talking about economic realities here. We got to live in reality. So shake out the brain fog that says that he's just some type of Bond villain. He's a human being living in a real world, bound by the principles and realities of the real world. Why would Vladimir Putin blow up his number one financial asset? I mean, I guess you could argue that he is psychotic, sociopathic, but that's tough. That's really tough. The people who actually cui bono, the people who actually really benefited from this, United States of America and NATO. As Tucker illuminates here.
There have been a number of official investigations of what happened, and not one has found any evidence of Russian involvement. And now we have the actual answer to what happened. Oh, the Biden administration did it. For real. Investigative reporter Seymour Hersh, who's been around for more than 50 years, just wrote a piece on Substack that includes this, quote, last June, the Navy divers, U.S. Navy divers, operating under the cover of a widely publicized midsummer NATO exercise known as Baltops 22, planted remotely triggered explosives that 3 months later destroyed 3 of the 4 Nord Stream pipelines, according to a source with direct knowledge of the operational planning. Now, this piece continues. It's probably the most comprehensive news story you will read this year. Seymour Hersh on Substack, you should read it. And it recounts in detail meetings with the National Security Advisor at the White House, where this was planned, exactly what explosives were used, how they were triggered, by what aircraft, on what day. So many details in here that it is not possible that it's not true. It is true. And in fact, no one in the high level in the U.S. government is denying it with any specificity. Instead, the White House is just dismissing it as utterly false, and no reporters are following up on this. Amazing.
We'll follow up on it because we have an obligation to you, our audience, to tell you what is happening in the world around you. You're also incredibly intelligent, and you can decide for yourselves. CIA Director William Burns is said to have authorized a working group to draw up plans for deep-sea divers to carry out the mission. Hersh, who is the author of this piece, again, a Pulitzer Prize-winning 50 years experience as a reporter, worked for the New York Times, likened the plot to an undersea spying operation launched by the U.S. in the 1970s, when operatives tapped into an underwater communication cables used by the Russian Navy. According to Hersh, and this is a synopsis of his very long piece, probably 10,000 words on his Substack. Please go read it for yourself. According to Hersh, in early 2022, the CIA group told Sullivan's task force, we have a way to blow up the pipelines. In March, members of the U.S. planning team flew to Norway for discussions with the Norwegian Secret Service and Navy. They decided to carry out the blasts near Denmark's Bornholm Islands, it is claimed. Now, this is being claimed from firsthand knowledge, a whistleblower directly inside one of these intelligence forces or the U.S. Navy. We're not sure. Hersh does not tell us his sources, obviously. Person would get the Julian Assange, Edward Snowden treatment. Norway's foreign ministry said on Wednesday these allegations are false. The initial plan was to plant explosives with a 48-hour timer, but the White House later asked for a method that would allow more control over the timing of the blast, and the buoy technique was developed, according to a report. Hersh reports that the buoy was dropped by a Norwegian Navy P-8 surveillance plane on September 26th during seemingly routine flight and explosives detonated a few hours later. Hersh is a former New York Times and New Yorker reporter who won numerous awards for his investigative journalism, including about the Vietnam War and about the Abu Ghraib scandal following the invasion of Iraq. His reporting has previously been criticized for his reliance on unnamed anonymous sources, but these people will get the, again, Edward Snowden treatment if they are allowed or if they are brave enough to go out and speak. He's clearly sourcing directly from inside of our military. It is the best reported piece that you will see today and the most thorough. And the details are in stark relief. They are crystal clear as day. As is the idea that Joe Biden is probably the number one eco-terrorist that the world has ever known. Because what has now happened is that the amount of gases, CO2, that Joe Biden continually gripes about and wants to end fossil fuels over, emissions that have been released into the ocean that have poisoned an entire ocean and slaughtered untold numbers of marine and airborne fowl, it's incalculable. Joe Biden, by every measure, if this indeed does play out to be true, will be removed from office for this. People that we have spoken to directly inside of our U.S. Congress say that they were never briefed on this issue. Now, this is a black box operation. Now, that's going to be a real problem. And it's going to require a lot of security concerns. But ladies and gentlemen, this operation is a wartime operation. This is clearly a declaration of war. This is wartime terrorism and sabotage against a nuclear-armed power. Congress not being consulted is going to lead to the removal of Joe Biden. This is arguably the thing that will bring down the regime, if found to be true. Russia is saying that Joe Biden is a terrorist who must be brought to justice. Speaker of the Russian parliament branded Joe Biden a terrorist after a report by veteran U.S. investigative journalist Seymour Hersh blamed Washington for sabotaging Nordstream pipelines. I mean, listen, guys, this thing is going to spiral out of control very, very, very quickly. Do you believe that the U.S. had the capacity to blow up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline? Who has the motive? Use Occam's razor. What is the least number of conclusions that you have to jump to? White House says that Nord Stream pipeline explosion, utterly false. So the White House didn't use any detail or didn't give any evidence for themselves as to why this is wrong. They just said it's wrong. It's a complete fiction. That's what the White House said. Reuters has not corroborated the report published by U.S. investigative journalist Seymour Hersh, which said the attack was carried out in September at the direction of President Joe Biden. This is false and a complete fiction, said Anadrel Watson, former spokesperson for the White House National Security Council. Spokespeople for the CIA and State Department said the same. The pipelines are a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure project designed to carry Russian gas to Germany under the Baltic Sea. Sweden and Denmark, in whose exclusive economic zones the blast occurred, have both concluded the pipelines were blown up deliberately, but have not said who is responsible. There's not been a single piece of evidence that says that Vladimir Putin has done this. Again, we're doing our very best here to look clear-eyed as American patriots at this issue and ask, why would Vladimir Putin blow up his number one economic asset? It just doesn't make any sense. However, it does make a lot of sense if you are looking at the side of the, let's call them allies, for lack of a better term, in the Ukraine war, and if you're looking at Joe Biden's predations in Ukraine and his family's predations in Ukraine and what the globalist American empire has to lose, ladies and gentlemen. Is there such a thing as a conflict with both sides not being the good guy? Yeah, there is. It happens all the time, in fact. And you, as the American people, should be infuriated at this story. There's a lot of questions that need answering. People in the Senate who we've been talking to say that there's going to be hearings on this. It's a big crime to lie to the United States Senate, House Armed Services Committee. We'll see what happens. Thank you for watching. Our channel is here to meme the libs until they cry and then to meme them crying. They're tears. They taste just like sweet, delicious ice cream. Salty, too. We ridicule the establishment and the libs because of you. Your support keeps us going. So if you like what you saw, please punch the subscribe button, click like, and ring the little bell so that you know when we're live. Don't you want to know when we're live? And make sure that you subscribe to our email list just in case the plug gets pulled, as tends to happen. If you want to see more of our videos, click here or here. My name is Benny Johnson. Stay free, Base Patriots.